Hey everybody, Kerzac here again with another video. Today is a Transformers discussion about, well, parts forming. It's been rather infamous, especially with Earthrise and some of the studio figures, that it is a little bit unavoidable on certain things, but Hasbro's been particularly egregious with two rather infamous examples that have sit in the middle. But I did want to start by saying there is some upsides to parts forming. I do feel like a rather excellent example of it is Wreck-Gar here. I do think this figure is a little bit too simple of a transformation, but this is one of the better examples of parts forming, as of course you can put his wheels anywhere you wish. You know, they pop right off. And then of course you can just put them wherever you want. So you know, give him two wheels and arms, or once they give out Scrap Peep, I think his name is, once that one comes out, you can of course make new Junkions by simply changing around the wheel formation, so you can kind of pretend it's a different Junkion. So that's kind of the good part about parts form. Obviously, Hasbro probably could have figured out some way to have the wheels not parts form, you know, considering the wheels go right here and here. There's probably some way they could have hinged this around underneath, or hinged this along the back of the knee or the front of the knee somehow. But let's be honest, it's more fun just being able to put the wheels where we want. That way we can recreate any animation scene we want, or you can even take the wheels off altogether if you don't really like the wheels on Wreck-Gar. So that's kind of one of the things that goes well with parts form. Another example here is Siege Shockwave, or Galactic Man Shockwave, as I have here. Of course, his armor is not required for his robot mode, but it's fairly required for his vehicle mode. As without it, he kind of just looks, he doesn't really do the submarine thing too well. He doesn't really look too much like a spaceship. Not a traditional spaceship anyway. So he does kind of require the parts, but you can also get away without having them. And obviously in robot mode, if you just want him to look like Shockwave, you don't need them at all. So another kind of on its own example of how parts forming can be done fairly well. But of course right here in the middle, we kind of have the two more negative aspects of parts forming. Now when Cliffjumper came out, of course, he had his little backpack here. And yeah, this did feel rather lazy considering it's just popped off. They knew they wanted to get onto the back. They knew they didn't want to have this part of the transformation at all, or bulk out his legs, or bulk out his arms with kibble. So fair enough, I'm just wanting to get it to where it needs to go without having caused too much trouble. And there have been third-party kits that have been able to get the backpack onto his back without parts forming by creating a long, thin piece of plastic, which does work, but I can kind of see why Hasbro didn't do that, because for one, if they had, let's be honest, if Hasbro had made a thin piece like that, it probably would have broke. Let's be honest, if we had left that up to Hasbro's factories, that long piece would break, and we would have to buy a third-party filler piece anyway. Especially with how things like, the clear plastic on Studio Series Jazz, for example, has gone. So I do think this is still a problem with just wanting to get it onto his back without having to worry about it. But with him, I can understand a little bit more since he is a smaller figure. It's a little bit harder to kind of work it into him. I can forgive it to an extent. This is the one I feel like everybody has a problem with when it comes to parts forming, to the point that she's kind of considered the worst RC figure despite being the most accurate. And there's some benefits to her because she is a very accurate RC. She has just the right amount of kibble. She's a perfectly good action figure. Problem is this. Yeah, literally her whole vehicle mode just not her whole vehicle mode, but more than half. I would argue that is more than half. Yeah, because the part that's taken off is bigger than the kibble that's left. Now, the flip side with her is that, unlike Cliffjumper, it's actually optional to remove the kibble, as of course you can clip it into her. Oh, this is kind of part of the problem, is that for such a simple shell-forming transformation, it's actually kind of a pain to deal with. I'm sure there are people who get it work a lot better than I do, but for me, I have had 3 different versions, because I've had the Lifeline version, or whatever her name was that came with Ratchet, the Elite 1 version, and this RC. And yeah, of course, you could leave it on there, you could clip it up, it still leaves your leg free, but now you have this. Now, you know the hiker from Pokemon, the guy you always see with a tremendous backpack? I believe RC here still has a bigger backpack than him now, to the point that she actually has to do the whole Michael Jackson lean just to keep herself from falling over now. And I can clip it in a little bit better, but my copy doesn't, of my RC at least there. Sometimes it'll work with me, sometimes it won't. Even then, it's still, even with her large heels, makes her horribly imbalanced. And we have seen this better as Cyberverse RC. I don't have mine now, it's in storage, but Cyberverse RC did this exact same thing of having our entire vehicle mode kind of become our backpack much, much better, with a much better transformation, I might add. I think that's part of why that makes this figure so egregious as well, is despite the fact that she's using so much parts forming and she's just a shell former, her transformation still stinks. Like, yeah, shell forming is always not a great transformation. There's not that much fun to it because all you're doing is folding the robot up inside of a vehicle. But hers, for me, is particularly bad, mainly because when you do have her in vehicle mode, I'm not going through her transformation just to show this, but you can see the back end of her vehicle looks like it's actually missing a piece. You can actually even see 2 pegs there. It straight up looks like there's a piece missing. So when you do have her in vehicle mode, you can still see all of her sticking out the back, despite the fact that she's a shell former. So it's... And like I said, getting her into vehicle and out of vehicle mode, it's still a pain in the butt, even with being able to remove the kibble. It's still annoying because they have all these small pieces that need to move. And her robot mode doesn't have set places to click in, but her legs and arms do have to go in a very, very specific way in order to fit underneath the vehicle. And then you still get a vehicle mode that kind of looks like a bar of soap. So I do feel like this is kind of where a lot of parts forming hate goes towards, is figures like this. You know, Cliff Jumper, I can still understand the argument. I'm kind of in the middle of an argument with Cliff Jumper, because he does look good. He does make a good vehicle and robot mode. And the parts forming is only a little bit. His vehicle mode, don't get me wrong, his vehicle mode's still ruined. Just like Wreck-Gar here's vehicle mode is ruined if he loses his wheels. Or just like Shockwave there, doesn't really have a great spaceship mode if he loses his parts. But at least there's still something you can do with those. You know, if you lose the wheels on Wreck-Gar, you can still kind of say he's a hover bike or something. You could come up with stuff. Or at the very least, these are nice large pieces that kind of have easy places to go, and it's very understandable why they left the wheels to where they can be parts formed. Cliff Jumper, there's excuses you could make for his size and everything. You know, he would have to make some pretty thin plastic in order to make a transformation piece that would fit his backpack. RC, there really wasn't an excuse. It was just they made a nice RC action figure and then they worked in the vehicle mode afterwards. This really feels like something that should have just been a Transformers Red figure if they were just going to do this, and not to mention, even after being such like transformations, she's still hollow all over the place. But that's a different discussion for another day. But yeah, parts forming is one of those things that I'm kind of in the middle on. Like, there's other good examples, such as Ultra Magnus, obviously, because how he armors up, that's a parts former. Same thing for his the remold into Galaxy Upgrade Optimus Prime. And those, I feel like, obviously, we kind of had to do that in order to have both modes. You know, if you wanted Ultra Magnus to integrate the trailer into transformation, you just get the Combiner Wars version. I do feel like that's kind of where the parts forming works better, is on stuff like that. Same thing can even be said for Shockwave, and I do think Wreck-Gar is probably one of the better examples of parts forming. But RC just does it in all the wrong ways. Nothing about this feels like effort. All this just feels like we need an RC figure, but we're going to stick to the G1 model, and the only way to get the G1 model is just by flat removing this. And I do understand the dilemma. RC never even had a G1 toy because of how hard it was to kind of get a vehicle mode, to get her space vehicle mode, and still have her look like RC. You know, she has very thin proportions. She's very light. She's very... I don't know how else to describe it. You know, she's very spindly. It's very thin. It's a very thin figure. So I can understand the point. But that's why we've changed her vehicle mode. Even the new upcoming Bumblebee movie RC, the Studio Series one that's based on the Bumblebee movie, there's a reason we kind of went for more of a jet bike here. And even then, they still made her proportions thicker in order to actually fit the jet bike. So that way she doesn't have to do this. And I'm not really sure how to explain why this is so egregious to me while I'm okay with Cliff Jumper. I'm not sure what the thin line right there is, but the line was being touched when they did Cliff Jumper, and then they crossed it when they did RC here. That's where it stands for me. I'm not sure exactly how I could explain that, but that very thin line of what's acceptable with parts forming was quickly crossed. Not just stepped over, but it was jumped when they did this. Where we're just left with this. I mean, you know, they say that you can do something with this, but we know that's not a hoverboard. It's half of her vehicle mode just sitting on the ground. You know, they try to say the same with Cliff Jumper. I don't count that as a shield, but at least his... I think what does it for me is Cliff Jumper still has somewhere for his kibble to go. And yeah, RC does have somewhere for her kibble to go, and it ruins her robot mode. It it's one of those things where it's like they should have just done 2 separate figures if they're going to do this. They should have just given us a robot mode that looked good and a vehicle mode that looked good. Because now we either have a robot that can't transform, a robot that can't stand, or we have a vehicle that looks like a bar of soap with the back end still revealing the robot mode. So yeah, this is definitely where it crosses the line for parts forming. This is the line where Hasbro, and I don't think Hasbro's going to go back to doing this. You know, obviously they've repainted her a couple times, they've remolded her in Alita 1, but I believe even the new, there's supposed to be another Alita 1 coming out, and that one's supposed to be a different mold. So I feel like they knew they went too far with this. The fact that she shelf formed so bad and she barely goes for $15 on eBay anymore also shows that, yeah, they went too far with this. Nobody wants this figure. And that's sad to know, because there was a long time where we didn't have RC figures. And the Generations one was not perfect, the Cyberverse one, it wasn't perfect, but those at least feel like there was effort put into them. This is just them flat giving up. So yeah, this kind of went from talking about parts forming to ranting about RC, but she's kind of the whole reason discussion even came up. Cliffjumper started it, but she definitely finished it. So, this has been Kerzac. I hope you enjoyed this discussion, and I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Hey, Kerzac here again. Quick little thing I wanted to add that kind of popped in my mind after I finished filming. I think the real thing that really separates these two from me is that, at least with Cliffjumper, if he does parts form, he still looks good. He has a little bit of a backpack, but he still looks fine. He looks like a good figure. He still looks like Cliffjumper. He's still a good little figure. I feel like that's where RC here crosses the line, is that if you do leave her kibble on, you're left with that. You're just left with a very, very ugly, very big backpack that covers figure, because it makes her hard to balance now. And I think that's where it's more forgivable Cliffjumper, is that he does look good with it. RC doesn't look good. She only looks good when you take away the kibble. And at that point, you're just keeping a little baggie around. When I feel like they could have at least done something with this. And yes, they did give us the hoverboard mode here, but let's be honest, nobody's going to use this as the hoverboard, or somebody. I'm sure there's a couple people out there who use this for a stand or something, but nobody's using this as some kind of hoverboard. I know you're supposed to flip the pieces out, but let's be honest, it looks the same no matter what you do. You know, you can stick her on there and whatever, but it doesn't look like anything, you know, just to show. You can stick her on there. And she fell over because she's not balanced very well on there, but that's everything too. It's hard to balance her on there, but you can see, you know, you can just stick her on there and you can make it look like she's hoverboarding on it, skateboarding. But it doesn't look like a hoverboard. It looks like a piece of her vehicle fell off and she's just standing on it. So I feel like they could have done something with this. Turn this into a giant riot shield. Turn it into armor for her legs. You know, have pieces pop off and form around her legs to make armor. Give her an armor, but give her what Shockwave and Ultra Magnets have. There's a lot of ideas they could have done with this. There's a lot of interesting things they could have done with this. Would it completely forgiven them? No, but it would have given us more than what we have now. So yeah, I think that's the big thing. The problem with parts forming is really just, at the end of the day, it's lazy. It really just comes down to laziness. There's excusable moments, but there's definitely figures that cross the line with how far they can go while still just saving money. So anyway, just wanted to add that little bit in. Hope you all have a good day.